Matthew Kaminski, an editor and journalist and co-founder of Politico Europe, joins me now on TVP World. Welcome to the program.
Great to be back here.
We're here at Freedom Games in Łódź in Poland, a conference that we're talking about freedom from different angles. But frankly, what does freedom really mean in 2025 in the world of chaos and uncertainty?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that the fight for freedom is never over. And that is I think that's something that should motivate people on all sides of the political aisles in democracy. We live in systems that are living organisms that can be challenged, and have been challenged throughout human history, and that is unchanged. They are being challenged for various reasons, and they're also proven very resilient in certain places and very vulnerable in other places. I feel that we are definitely in a post-war era, in the sense that the post-war era was post-1945. There was structures that were created mostly by the US, the victor in that conflict, and that was set against what the Soviet Union was pushing. The Soviet Union has been dead for 30 plus years.
It's all falling apart.
But
the dominant role of the United States as well.
I think anyone who bets against the US has always come out on the losing end. And I would not make any assumptions about where the US is. First of all, the US is a country of 340 plus million people. It's got very complicated politics. But and I get the thrust of your question, which is really about Donald Trump and what he is doing. And I don't think you should make assumptions about him either. Not that his instincts are in the right place, or that he talks about democratic values or even freedom. His definition of freedom is probably different than yours might be, but only in the sense that I think Donald Trump is a man who does not have an ideology, does not even have a grand strategy.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It depends how you play it out, and depends how you play it out analytically, but more to the point and more relevant is how it plays out in the political space, domestically in the US, but also how America's, we used to call them America's partners, but let's say now other countries, how they work with him, challenge him, and try and convince him to do certain things and not do other things. Because the outcome is not foreordained. That is the key thing about Trump. One day he's doing this, the next day he's doing this. For us, that is hard to reconcile. For him, that is the natural state of things.
What kind of influence does it have on Europe, this kind of changing decisions every day, a different point of view from Trump? It does influence European politics, doesn't it?
Of course, we're all, I mean, it's crazy to think that we've had Trump in our lives. I've had him in my life since 1980s, when he became a prominent person in the US. We've had a decade of him in the political system, and yet somehow we're still puzzled by it. We shouldn't be puzzled by it. Maybe you need to have more of a psychology degree than a political science degree to understand it. But Trump is not that complicated. He is telling you every day what he's thinking, but ultimately it is about, someone once said, the way that, for example, the European leaders have to learn how to deal with him, and they are slowly learning. Vladimir Putin knows how to deal with him, but then other European leaders are too. And someone who's close to him said, one, flatter him. Yes, definitely tell him you're the greatest, blah, blah, blah. He loves that very openly. But you cannot stop there. That is not enough. You have to kind of invoke a sense of grievance. You've got to promise him a big deal. And then lastly, you have to say how the alternatives are terrible for him. And it's all about him, remember.
All right. You've mentioned, when we talk about liberty and freedom, you mentioned there are more vulnerable places and less so. On that map, where would the Central and Eastern Europe be? Look at the recent elections in the Czech Republic. Look at Slovakia. Look at Hungary. Look at Poland. And we're still not sure whether we've got a break from populism or that we're actually getting out of it on a permanent basis. Where are we on this map of freedom?
I think the key thing is not because the party you don't like wins power and they're suddenly populist and a great threat to democracy. By the way, this is a feature of American politics where people on the right were saying that Joe Biden is the greatest threat to democracy, and now obviously on the left that Donald Trump is. The key thing is what happens with your institutions. And here I think the spectrum is, and I think Poland is somewhere in the middle. I think the Czech Republic has actually probably done a bit better the last decade. Poland, under the Law and Justice Party, did undermine the courts, but you still have a very robust media, like you and others, and private media, and a very robust civic society. And then you have Hungary, and Hungary, I think, is the much more of a cautionary tale, where it resembles a little bit of an African country, where the state, private interest have fully merged in a way that, and corruption comes with this, but also what comes with this is
surprising because it is a member of the European Union.
Well, yes, it is, and this is partly thanks to Viktor Orban, but partly thanks to Brussels not being able to be strong enough to push back against it. But in Hungary, you don't have a free press, for example, and you have the business elites being completely enmeshed with the political elites, which means that neither of them has an interest in leaving, because the business wants the guys they trust, and the politician, well, one, Viktor Orban, is afraid that if he leaves, he's going to end up in jail on corruption charges.
Next year, we've got parliamentary elections in Hungary. What do you expect will happen? Now Orban is losing popularity. His main opposition party leader is gaining a lot. Is it realistic that Orban will lose, in your opinion?
I think it is realistic. I think what Poland showed you a couple years ago when peace did lose power, free and fair, is that if you have enough space for civic society, and if you have enough stronger institutions, then you can turn it back. I think with Hungary, yes, the field was stacked against the opposition. Yes, Orban controls the press, but the main reason why he keeps winning, and the main reason why in Turkey, another extreme example,
because he suppresses the media, he suppresses judiciaries.
But
Erdogan, part of the problem everywhere.
Erdogan in Turkey and Orban in Hungary are just far better at politics than the opponents. So this mayor of Budapest, does he have the skills to win, or is Orban tempted to pull an Erdogan who jailed the mayor of Istanbul,
Matthew,
who's his main opponent?
Is it politics, or is it post-politics, as we say? That it's not necessarily based on truth, on fact, but on emotions,
It's a very naive
on
way.
anger.
I don't know. I think we can all idealize politics. Has always been messy. It has always been ugly. Look at the American people, like, oh, Donald Trump, it's unprecedented. Look at 19th century America and how politics played out there. Very nasty. Like, these are humans fighting over things they claim to believe in, sure, fighting over money. So, yeah, I mean, we all like to read our, Montesquieu and think that that's the way things really work. This is the real world, and humans resolve their differences through politics, so it's obviously going to be ugly.
So what is politics going to be like in the next 5 years with new technologies, with social media, with post-truth, disinformation, and all of it that we can't really defend ourselves against effectively at the moment?
Well, we can if we are resilient as humans, and humans are very resilient creatures. That's why we're still here. I'm also not as much of a pessimist as at least I sense you might be by the tone of your questions. I think a lot of what is happening, including in American politics, is in some ways very healthy. These issues have to be resolved in the Commons, and people, and in some ways actually in American politics, I think it's happening a little bit in Europe, but certainly in the US, what you've seen technology do to how we consume information, how we communicate, is now changing politics itself. That can be a good thing. It's also a very disorienting, potentially a bad thing, because it amplifies some of the bad stuff. The noise levels are hard to bear. There is no arbiter, which is my profession, your profession. We always thought of ourselves as being the arbiter between, we decide what truth is. That's not true. I mean, that's not possible anymore.
Two different or several different sides of the story, just to give our viewers and our listeners different points of view for them to decide.
Yeah, we made it possible to have a much more of a single conversation than is possible now. That's the reality. But you saw the other weekend in the US, there were massive protests against Donald Trump. He is not a popular person. He now controls Congress, so it gives him a lot of power. But we've had presidents in America in the past who've been imperial in how they've used the office. From all aisles. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was seen as an autocrat in his time. Andrew Jackson, Trump very much resembles Andrew Jackson. And yet, the country is celebrating its 250th birthday next year, and it happens to be the world's oldest democracy. So again, I come back to anyone who goes short on the U.S. tends to end up losing money.
So liberal democracy across the world, including the United States, is not lost in your opinion?
I would
It's
just
not a
rather,
lost cause.
I would rather quote Benjamin Franklin, who famously said after the Constitution was adopted, paraphrasing, "You've got a republic, now see if you can keep it." And the point is, it's always something you have to fight for. It is not something you take for granted.
Thanks for joining us. And
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Great, good to see you.